introduce your father in a forum like this. I said to Sue before it started that it was kind of like bringing coal to Newcastle to introduce my father. But another analogy that I have is that introducing my father here in Lexington is like bringing sand to a beach. You know, what more can I add that you already know?
When I was in the 5th grade, maybe 6th grade, you know, in those days, part of the curriculum was to memorize poetry. And they had us, my English teacher, Mr. Coriel, learning Paul Revere's Ride. And I was completely taken with it. And so I always vowed that one day I would live here. So I moved here in 1949. I thought that to set the stage, I'd remind you of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's famous poem called Paul Revere's Ride. A voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. For born on the night wind of the past, through all our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need, the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere. Once in a while in your life, you make a conscious decision. I'd been president of the Harvard Crimson, the newspaper, daily newspaper, and there was a new magazine opening up in Washington called The Reporter. Became very popular, and I thought, well, and there was reason to think I could have gotten a job in journalism there, but I thought, no, I'd rather do stuff than write about it. Mm-hmm. Crucial decision.
Yes. Is this where Eleanor Roosevelt came in? Because wasn't
through the World Affairs Council, yeah. I mean, working with her is a sort of a stretch. She was wonderful, though. We did a lot of program, and we would ask her to come and do a talk or something, and then I'd pick her up in the airport and drive her back and chat with her, got to know her. And Mrs. Roosevelt was wonderful. She was so cooperative, you know.
Okay.
When she wasn't rehearsing, I remember the afternoon rehearsal, she was sitting over in a corner, catnap. She'd take a catnap, and then they'd call her and she'd do her thing. And she did it that evening.
So she was a warm and gracious woman, would you say?
She was so interesting. She had no airs about her. Very willing, committed to whatever cause she was involved in. At the end of her life, her doctor, I've read, said to her, well, Mrs. Roosevelt, I could keep you going. You don't have not going to be able to do anything. And she said, well, if I'm not going to be able to do anything, what's the point?
Yeah. You were going down to work for Kennedy in the White House. Right. How did you make that connection now?
Well, I'd been involved with him since I met him 49, and then again in 54, and then worked on peripherally on some of his projects in the 50s. So we had a friendship, and kind of friendship you have in politics. I remember the commencement in 1960, about 3 weeks before. I was an alternate delegate at Los Angeles, but about 3 weeks before the convention, we, again, how different things are. We passed in the middle of Harvard Yard, and he was all dolled up, and because he was an overseer, but he had no entourage. Nobody was with him. He had no Secret Service, nothing, and he was just a few weeks from being the Democratic nominee.
He was
senator. So he said, "Oh, Dan, you were out in Wisconsin for that primary out there last winter." And I said, "Yeah, Jack, boy," because it was always Jack before he was elected president. Then it was always Mr. President. "Yeah, Jack," I said, "it's a long way between people out there." And he laughed and he said, "Yeah, and they're not that friendly when you meet them either." They asked me, he didn't, to take over his Boston office for his successor in the Senate, Ben Smith.
Okay.
So I ran the Boston office for a few months, half-time. That was fun. And then I was teaching and doing some writing at Harvard Business School, and I got a call, and a guy named Ralph Duncan, in that picture we've got. And I said, "Oh, hi, Ralph, I thought I was on your ad list." And he said, "Oh, contraire, yeah, that's Ralph." He was later ambassador to Chile. The thing that's interesting about the White House in those days, the president's staff was 77 people. I've got the list. So it was really small, and you'd see him around the office the way you see any boss around the office. I asked people, "What do you think we were doing?" And talking about the missile crisis. Yeah, we were having our picture taken for an article in the Saturday Evening Post. And what he's saying to Ralph is, "Stop picking your nose, Ralph. You're having your picture taken."
What was it like working in the White House?
Well, it was very exciting. You know, a friend of mine, and Henry Petro, standing at the stoplight at Waltham Street and Mass Ave, a couple of Lexington people standing in front of him, and he overheard him say, one said, "Did you hear about Fenn?" And the other one said, "Yeah." And the first one said, "Could have been worse, you know." This was when the story came out that I was going to the White House. "Could have been worse, you know." He says, "How?" First one said, "Could have been elected selectman." Vice chairman and acting chairman of the United States Tariff Commission, and that was great fun. Because we'd have these hearings, and we'd go up to this bench with these big chairs, and I remember some pretty interesting moments. There was a guy representing the American date industry, you know, dates and nuts and stuff like that.
Oh, date. Okay.
So he's testifying against lowering tariffs on imported pitted dates from Turkey. Oh, it was boring as hell. I'm playing tic-tac-toe.
So you're not a date guy.
With my commissioner, one of my commissioners, and eating no dose to keep away. Then he said, "And the Turkish pitted dates are pitted by mouth, you know."
Oh, jeez.
Well, I woke up at that, and I leaned over the bench, and I said, "Excuse me, what did you just say?" "Oh, yes," he said, "they have these old men, and they sit there, and they get 6 dates in their mouth, and chew them a little bit, and then spit the pits out one side, then take the dates out and put them in a box."
Oh, how awful.
So you put a big tariff on those guys.
Yeah. I never had another pitted date from Turkey in my life.
I think when did you first become a Minuteman?
Yeah.
88.
And you've been one ever since?
Yeah, but I'm not quite as active as I used
That's
to be.
okay.
You
That's
know,
all right.
but
But-
I don't get out there
That's
with
all right.
my musket and powder on April 19th anymore.
But this is your hat.
That's right.
Right.
I use
Yep.
it from time to time.
Who did you characterize? Who was your character?
Corporal Ebenezer Parker. It was
okay.
typecasting, Peter. He was 25, and his wife was 8 months pregnant when he was out there on the green.
Huh.
But I figure if I go out in the green, I can't get off fast enough, and the regulars will capture me, and that'll screw up the whole
That would screw up the whole story.
right.
And then you went on to become a selectman. And what years roughly were you
93 to 99.
in the 90s?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you have a good board? Well,
I thought it was a great board, and Bill Daly was chair, and Rick was town manager, Leo McSweeney, Dan Booza, and Betty Edison, and me. Now this is Ebenezer Scrooge.
oh, yes.
And I'll be reading again the Christmas Carol.
This reading of the carol goes back a long, long way in my family. This is my grandfather's pipe. And my father's. He used to read it, I remember. And my father always read it every Christmas. And I've read it to my family every Christmas. Now I'll tell you what, my friend, said Scrooge. I'm not going to stand this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, he continued, leaping from his stool and giving Bob such a dig in the waistcoat that he staggered back into the tank again. And therefore, I'm about to raise your salary. Bob trembled, got a little near the ruler. He had a momentary idea of knocking Scrooge down with it, holding him and calling in the people in the court for help and a straight waistcoat. "A Merry Christmas, Bob," said Scrooge, with an earnestness that could not be mistaken.
You've been a town meeting member, you're still a town meeting member
Right.
for 50-something years.
Well, the town meeting in those days, it was so different. We didn't sit by precinct or anything. We just sat where we wanted to sit. And I remember somebody of the liberal persuasion attacking me because I was sitting with back there with what he called the backbenchers, Joe Dini and some of those guys.
Okay.
I was sitting there because I liked those guys.
Right. Good for you.
I would like to announce that a very special member had a very special birthday yesterday. Mr. Dan Fenn, I understand you turned 95 yesterday. I hope you're going to say a few words to us on this auspicious occasion. I just want to point out, you know this, but I don't know if everyone knows this, you've spent more than half of your life as a member of town meeting.
That's right. Yeah,
That's even more extraordinary than the 95 years.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the support. I need it. I said to one of my sons the other day, gee, my legs are shot, but I think my brain and my mouth work pretty well, I think. And he said, well, Dad, you made the right choice. So I'm going to
continue to try and use those too on the floor here. Thank you very much for noticing it.